Good evening, my friends. Welcome to Friday Night Live, my fourth show of the day. Ooh, robust. Robust. All right, I know we got one person wants to talk. Richard, I'll get you in a sec. Just wanted to mention that apparently Chuck Norris has died. The Iranian mullahs have informed everyone that less than 24 hours after the passing of Chuck Norris, there are no more virgins in heaven. I'm afraid that's happened. When Chuck Norris installs Windows, Microsoft accepts his terms and conditions. That's important. Chuck Norris and Superman once fought each other on a bet. Of course, the loser had to start wearing his underwear on the outside of his pants. I'm sure you're aware of all of this. After 86 years of careful negotiation, Death finally accepted Chuck Norris's terms. Chuck Norris's Gmail account is gmail@chucknorris.com. Chuck Norris doesn't turn on the shower, he just stares at it until it starts to cry. If you try to create a strong password, Chuck Norris, it says the password is too strong. Too strong. Chuck Norris simply walked into Mordor. Important. When Chuck Norris, of course, as you know, attends a feminist rally, he comes back with his shirt ironed and a sandwich in his fist. Chuck Norris was in all the Star Wars movies. He was the Force. Just important to know these things. When Chuck Norris gets pulled over, he lets the cops off with a warning. There's a rare snapshot of a very short Chuck Norris arriving to kindergarten after dropping his parents off at work. Chuck Norris talking to an 11-year-old. When I was your age, I was already 12. St. Norris, patron saint of manly shit. In Lord of the Rings, Sauron, who's got my ring? Chuck Norris, I do. Sauron, it suits you. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes down the earth. Chuck Norris can rub two pieces of fire together and make wood. Chuck Norris once threw a grenade that killed 6 enemy soldiers, and only then did the grenade explode. Death once had a near Chuck Norris experience. When Chuck Norris steps on a Lego, the Lego cries. Chuck Norris says, I too was once a man trapped in a woman's body. Then I was born. Chuck Norris did not die. The world could no longer contain Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris never dials the wrong number. You just answered the wrong phone. When Alexander Graham Bell first invented the telephone, he had 3 missed calls from Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris, legend has it, once told a woman to calm down. And she did. Chuck Norris, of course, has counted to infinity twice. Chuck Norris doesn't even breathe. Air hides in his lungs for protection. Chuck Norris once urinated in a semi-truck's gas tank as a joke. That truck is now referred to as Optimus Prime. Chuck Norris went to the Virgin Islands. Now they're just the islands. When Chuck Norris left for college, he told his father, You're the man in the house now. Chuck Norris can hear sign language. Chuck Norris carrying his own coffin. You can't find Bigfoot because he owes Chuck Norris money. Chuck Norris once won an underwater breathing contest against a fish. Chuck Norris is the reason Waldo is hiding. Behind Chuck Norris's beard, there is no chin, only another fist. Chuck Norris went on an apology tour. Literally everybody apologized. Chuck Norris can speak Russian and Chinese. Bruce Lee hit Chuck Norris with the legendary quivering death palm, a forbidden move that would kill a man in 5 seconds. Chuck Norris died 54 years later. Chuck Norris, in fact, died 20 years ago. Death just hasn't built up the courage to tell him. How many push-ups can Chuck Norris do? All of them. Chuck Norris can stare straight at the sun. The sun looks away. The flu has to get Chuck Norris shots once a year. Here's an obscure one. When Chuck Norris plays Serious Sam, the headless kamikazes run away in silence. Chuck Norris can bake a cake in the freezer. Chuck Norris admitted to using stunt doubles in his movies, but only for the crying parts. Chuck Norris can build a snowman out of rain. When the Hulk gets really angry, he turns into Chuck Norris. All right. Chuck Norris. So let's get one more. Or 2 more. Sorry, let me get my... Chuck Norris caught all the Pokemon from a landline. Chuck Norris and the Hulk had an arm wrestling contest. Whoever lost had to paint themselves green. Chuck Norris uses pepper spray to season his meat. Chuck Norris won NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 just by running. Last night, an 82-year-old widow looked at this picture of Chuck Norris. Today, she's pregnant. All right. Chuck Norris had a bridge named after him. No one dares cross it. Chuck Norris once killed 2 stones with 1 bird. Chuck Norris can send texts on a rotary phone. When zombies bite Chuck Norris, they become Chuck Norris. All right. I think we're good. Thank you for your indulgence. I really could do that pretty much for the rest of the weekend, but I recognize that I may not be entirely, you may not share your thing. What are your thoughts on people being chronically late? Bugs the hell out of me. I actually had to talk about this not too long ago with people I knew. It is kind of annoying because it's my time is important, your time is not. And my point is like you'd be on time for a doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, you'd be on time for an airplane that you had to catch, you'd be on time for a court appointment, you'd be on time to talk to the police if they asked you to come in, but you can't be on time for me because it's a power thing. My time matters, your time doesn't matter. I'm more important than you, you're late, right? I mean, nobody says to the king who shows up late, hey man, you're late. So generally, it's a power play. All right. Yeah, Variety just posted a hateful piece about him. All right, let's go. Oh, we lost the first guy. We now have the next guy. Oh, hang on. No, sorry. Let me just. Richard was here first, and I didn't see him on the screen. My apologies. So you can come back. But Richard, if you want to unmute, thank you for your patience. I'm all ears. I hear sound. I hear not Richard. I think you're muted, bro.
Somebody speaking.
There we go.
Oh, so, hey, Stefan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can.
Hey, can you hear me, Stefan?
Yes, go ahead.
Probably not.
All right. Well, it looks like he's having some tech issues.
Hey, can you hear me, Stefan?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me, Stefan?
Okay, one more time.
Nope,
Can you
I
hear
can't
me?
hear you either.
Oh, hang on.
Can you hear me?
Oh no, I think that was at my end. All right, go ahead.
Okay.
My apologies. Sorry,
Stefan.
that was on me. Go ahead.
Hi, Stefan. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. I just actually wanted to apologize. I did put a comment out there, but I just wanted to apologize for Wednesday when I was the first guy on, and I was pretty disrespectful in speaking over you when you were trying to speak. I just wanted to apologize for that.
I appreciate that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, yeah. Actually, I have a question. Are you a fan of science fiction?
I am.
Okay, yeah. Are you familiar with the book "A Moon is a Harsh Mistress"?
Robert Heinlein.
Yeah.
I think I've made it through half a Heinlein book. I read The Moon is. I read about half of The Moon is a harsh mistress and Stranger in a Strange Land. I could never quite get into his style, although I do hear that he's ANCAP and freedom oriented and so on. It just seemed too self-consciously cool. There were no actual people in his books for me. I like some crossed wires, some vulnerabilities, some challenges, and everybody just seemed very self-consciously cool and able, and it just seemed like a bit more of an advertisement for his own cool self rather than exploratory literature. And so I could never quite get into him, but I'm certainly happy to hear contrary arguments or experiences.
Yeah, it's a very subjective thing, right? So, yeah, I did enjoy the Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I wasn't quite so happy with Stranger in a Strange Land. Those are the only two books I've read of his. The other book I'm kind of interested to hear what your opinion is on is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Yeah, was it Robert Persoff?
Yeah.
I read that maybe when I was about 17 or so. And yeah, tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I quite enjoyed it. It was a number of years ago where I first read it. I quite enjoyed it. It was quite different, a kind of an interesting, more it's quite autobiographical, I think. And then the follow-up book, Layla, I think it's called, was quite interesting as well. Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. The mix of the motorcycle kind of journey and then his own kind of viewpoint on reality, I guess, in some sense. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that. I'm kind of interested into what would your favorite book be apart from the books you've written yourself? Would you have any recommendations for any particular book?
Sorry, it's just a bit of a general question.
Yeah.
So you read a little bit of Heinlein and you read a little bit of Robert Pirsig, but you're not really sharing any particular thoughts about them or stuff that other people might be interested in, right? Because it's like, I read this book, I thought it was interesting. That's not much of a conversation topic. And sorry to be a nag again, but
Okay.
what is it that you got out of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
I liked it because he was exploring the concept of quality, which is never really fully defined, but I found that quite interesting as a concept. And yeah, I did get something out of it in that respect, and I felt I felt it was a worthwhile read. I do have a book I'd like to recommend for anybody who's interested. It's not a fictional book, but it's quite a startling and amazingly well-written story. It's called The Tiger. I think it's written by a Canadian guy, John Valiant, and it's about a Siberian tiger in the eastern part of Russia that was hunted down and killed as a result of it becoming a manhunter. But it's a great book in sense of the history of the region and the creature itself, and the whole story is beautifully written book, and the fact that it's a true story is interesting as well. Yeah.
Okay, and what is it that you got out of the book that you consider important? Was there a life message or a moral or an insight or something else?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. The whole story is about this tiger that hunted down and killed a man, and what I took away from the book was this apex. It's an apex predator. It's the largest wild cat in nature, and there's only a few of them remaining at this point. And I think the theory of mind that kind of came out of the book about the tiger itself was quite interesting. And he brings up these aspects of revenge from the tiger's point of view, and then all the forensic evidence sort of pointing towards that conclusion that the tiger did seek revenge on a particular person. Wasn't a random attack. It was a purposeful act of revenge that the tiger inflicted upon this man. And then, I thought that was quite interesting. The other thing I kind of thought it was.
I'm sorry, hang on. So revenge is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you I'm not sure.
Well,
are you used to engaging people in terms of content, or do you just say stuff?
No,
This
no,
book
no.
was interesting. I like this. Revenge is interesting. I mean, I'm not sure what to contribute to the conversation. Okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever had revenge on someone who's done you wrong? Had vengeance?
Not in a violent way. No.
Okay. What is the non-violent vengeance that you've taken on someone who's done you wrong?
Yeah, it's a tricky question for me, at least. I guess I suppose I kind of draw a bit of a line between revenge and vengeance. Maybe you can define the difference between those if I'm misreading that. I mean, there's a lot of different ways of we can sort of exact revenge on another person, right?
I really want to have a conversation with you. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. How clear do you think you're being, and how concise are your answers?
Yeah, they're not very concise.
Okay, so if you don't want to have a conversation with me, that's totally fine. I've got other callers and all of that. I just find it kind of odd. And I'm sorry to be a nag, right? I really am, because I don't know if people have just lost the art of conversation. This is, I think, part of why people just, and not you're not doing it now, but why maybe on Wednesday you and other people just kind of talk over me. I don't know if people are used to being back and forth in the conversation, but if I say, you say, I find vengeance or revenge. You say, I find revenge very interesting. I'm like, okay, well, what's your experience been with revenge? Let's talk about something that is practical in the world rather than you find a theory of mind in a book interesting, which doesn't communicate anything. No, let's not do that. Well, you start talking when I'm talking. You just did this on Wednesday, if you remember, right?
Sorry.
So,
No, that wasn't. Sorry, Stefan. That wasn't me speaking then.
oh, my apologies. Okay, thank you for the clarity. Okay.
It was me. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for the clarification. All right. So, in life, this is a good philosophical point as a whole. So, in life, we want people to enjoy talking with us. And how do we get people to enjoy talking with us? We try to be clear and concise, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so if you say, I find vengeance very interesting, and then move on to another topic, I don't know what you find interesting about revenge. You're just making a statement. It would be like me trying to have a conversation with saying, I like cheesecake. It's like, what can the other person add? I do or don't like cheesecake. And a cheesecake is a lot more defined in a sense than vengeance. At least it's a physical thing. So you say, I find the concept of the tiger took revenge, and I find the concept of vengeance or revenge very interesting. And I say, oh, what has your experience of vengeance been? And you say, well, I haven't been violent in terms of my vengeance. And it's like, okay, so but just tell me about non-violent vengeance. So I say, okay, tell me about non-violent vengeance. And you say, well, it's complicated because the difference between revenge and vengeance is very complicated, and how to define it is really challenging. And it's just like, you understand, it's kind of exhausting. We're not actually having a conversation because you need to, and even if you and I were just talking, I mean, we're talking to an audience here as well, right? So if you say that you find the idea of vengeance interesting, then you have to have ideas, I assume, about vengeance. And maybe you've never had any vengeance in your life. And maybe you don't want to say that. Maybe that makes you sound weak or something like that. But if you bring up the topic of vengeance and I say, tell me about your experience with vengeance, and you say, well, vengeance is very hard to define, and there's revenge and there's vengeance. And it's just like, oh my God, we've been talking for 10 minutes and I still haven't got any content from you. And so again, I'm not trying to be a nag. I'm really trying to help you in terms of conversation. And we owe it. It's a form of empathy to be clear and concise in our communication with others. Now, of course, there's things when you need to define your terms and all of that. You know, if you have already talked about revenge and we're in that topic because of the Tiger book, I don't know that you really, I think we kind of all understand what revenge is. You know, it's fighting back in a harsh manner against a historical wrong. Revenge is, in the moment, it's almost like self-defense. Someone punches you, you punch them back, right? And so that's in the moment. Revenge tends to be, what's the old saying? Revenge is a dish best served cold. So revenge tends to be down the road. You then do something to punch back against someone or harm someone who has harmed you in the past. And it tends not to be violent, at least in the West, but there's other ways of doing it. So if you say, I haven't had violent vengeance on someone, okay, well, of course, I wouldn't expect you to admit that on a public conversation because it might be illegal, right? Like I loosened the brakes on someone's car, like I wouldn't expect. So that's kind of understood that you're not going to be confessing to some horrible crime because vengeance is later on when you're not in an immediate situation of danger. And therefore it is probably illegal to have violent vengeance. This guy cut me off in the car, so later I set fire to his house. His vengeance, like that would be confessing something. So, of course, we're not going to be talking about something violent. And if it's too much work to have a conversation, people tend not to have conversations as a whole. And if you want to be in demand as a conversationalist, you need to find ways, and I say this to myself, like, please understand, I'm not trying to nag on you from some place of perfection or anything, but I'm like, okay, how can I add value to this conversation so that people walk away with something that they can use, something that is productive. So the way that I view conversations, and maybe this is helpful to you, and I'll shut up soon, but the way that I view conversations is I'm trying to add value. If I want someone to listen to me, I need to be adding value in some way to something they can do. So in this particular instance, conversation is kind of a lost art form because people do everything online and people have structured interactions like they're yelling at strategy on some gaming server or something like that, or they're sharing memes or reels or something. So the sort of art of back and forth conversation, I think, is really, really important. And that's why I do these call-in shows. And it's why it's very nice to have this good platform for that. And so when you're in conversation, and we have conversations all day long, for the most part, this is my 7th hour of conversations today, not even including my family. So we have conversations all day long. And I think what we want to do is say, what is the most value I can add in the shortest amount of time in a conversation? And if it is the case that, somebody's been talking with you for 10 minutes and they're not really gaining any particular information or insights or nothing that's of particular value. I like Robert Heinlein. I like Robert Pirsig. The theory of mind in this book is interesting and vengeance is interesting. There's no actual content there that we can interact on. You're just telling me things that you like without defining them. And so we get to vengeance and I say, okay, well, let's tell me a little bit about your experience with vengeance. And you say, well, it's tough to define and this and that and the other. And at some point it's just this is too much work. It is too much work to try and get value out of the conversation. And so it's kind of interesting because it's a middle of the road thing. So if you imagine you go see your favorite band, right? And you say, oh, they're going to play 20 of their greatest songs. And you're thrilled about that, right? And then they come out and they play 40 songs. I mean, you'd be happy unless they played each song at twice speed. I mean, I guess Queen used to do We Will Rock You, a fast version. But most times you wouldn't want the band to play the songs at double speed. So you also wouldn't want them to play a quarter speed, right? So you want a good number of songs played at the right speed. And so with conversation, if you don't define anything, when you say, I like the theory of mind that's in this book, I don't know what you mean by theory of mind. I don't know what you like about it. I can't relate. I can't transfer that content into my mind. And so I'm just hearing you say things you like that I don't particularly define. And that's like playing the songs way too fast. Okay. It's like doing Bohemian Rhapsody in 35 seconds. It's just kind of a squeal and a bunch of noise. So you do absolutely have to define your terms. And then, of course, people will say, but Steph, he was trying to define his terms by saying there was a difference between vengeance and revenge, and they're complicated to define. And here's the thing, though. If you think that vengeance versus revenge need to be defined, rather than telling me that it's important to define them, you could do what?
Yeah, I mean, I should have a dictionary in front of me, I think, really.
No, I'm not saying dictionary because that's an unrealistic standard. But if you say it's important to distinguish between revenge and vengeance, that's totally fine. But don't tell me that it's important.
Okay.
Right? So if I start introducing the word truth, I might say that which corresponds to reason and evidence. I wouldn't have a speech about how important it is to define the truth. I would just define the truth and move on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, I think from my point of view, we did have a conversation. I think the first time, it's going back a little ways now, and then you started sort of asking me questions about my family history and different things, and that allowed me to sort of flow a little easier into the conversation. I think perhaps I just sort of lack the same skills that you have, where you can get a conversation going. And I think I was hoping for this to lead into the, usually when we talk about vengeance, we're talking about human beings. And I think that the thing I found interesting was this, the fact that this this animal had exerted vengeance on a human being. And I thought, well, okay, that's kind of an interesting topic. And I think I was just hoping, I don't know why, this is obviously a lack on my part, that or an assumption on my part, that you would somehow kind of pick up on it or something. I don't know. So again,
Okay,
I
hang on.
apologize.
So it's very interesting, and I think that the mechanics of the conversation is very interesting to talk about. So you wanted to bring up the topic of vengeance, and you were hoping that I would pick up on it. And what were you hoping that I would do with the topic of vengeance?
Well, I think I was hoping that when I mentioned the fact that this tiger had exerted vengeance, then I guess I was just hoping that, okay, that would be something of interest or an interesting topic to explore. But I didn't really think it out very well, I don't think. It's not even like I had this kind of idea of bringing up this book in the first place. So I guess I'm more like, I guess I'm hoping for just a kind of an easy flow into a conversation. But I'm using up, this is not the correct, place for that,
Well,
because you have
listen,
other
it's fine.
people.
It's fine, and I appreciate it. But when you hit the "I want to talk" button, what
Mhm.
is it that you wanted to get across or talk about with me and the audience? Because I like this book, I like that book. This book has a theory of mine. This book is about vengeance. Honestly, I don't. I'm not trying to put you down or anything, but it's if you've ever had little kids and they tell you about their dreams, it's just and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and I know you're not that way. So when you said I want to talk and you want to, it's fine, monopolize this particular interaction. What value did you want to bring to me and the audience? Because it's important in life. What value are you bringing when you're asking people to interact with you? And this is not particular to this show or this conversation. And again, Richard, I really appreciate that we're having a conversation about this because it's important. Because in life, you want people to interact with you. How do you get people to interact with you? How do you get them to want to talk with you? I think they have to receive value relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And so, and this is a big challenge in life.
Yeah.
How do you provide value to people when you are first talking with them?
I I usually, when I think back to all the conversations I've had, I just, generally speaking, I ask the person a question in the hope that I will be opening up something they want to talk about. You know what I mean? So I think I'm out of my comfort zone here, because I'm not used to uh, being. I'm not used to being the one who sort of puts the question, puts the answer out there first. I'm generally speaking the one who's asking the questions, and then the other person then talks about whatever it is they want to talk about, and then it kind of flows from there. So I think I'm probably just out of my comfort zone here, being
Well,
the
hang on.
one.
So, sorry to interrupt. So then it would seem to me that the value that you provide is stimulating other people to talk about what they want to talk about or something like that. Sorry if I'm oversimplifying.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So the value that you provide is giving other people the opportunity to speak.
Yes.
Where do you think that comes from?
Wait, that's a that's a interesting question. Man, I don't know. Perhaps by not being listened to as a child, I think, perhaps.
Well, let me ask you this. When you were a child, who was fascinated by your thoughts? Who was not you? Obviously, we're all fascinated by our own thoughts. Who was interested in your thoughts?
Um, yeah, I don't. I I can't think of anybody really.
Hmm. And I'm really sorry for that. I mean, in genuine big hugs across the pixels sympathy, I'm really sorry about that. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and my daughter's mind is like a fascinating place for me to visit, and my wife's mind, and my friends' minds, and so on.
Yeah.
So, what was your experience as a child with your parents' interest?
In their interest with me.
Hmm.
Um, hmm. I do remember one. I don't know how old I was, 6 or 7 or something like this. It was Christmas morning, and back then, it was back in England. We lived in a tiny house. There's pillowcases, whatever. And I don't really.
I'm sorry,
I
pillowcases?
wanted.
How do pillowcases fit into that?
Oh, I don't know if you remember, they put the pillowcases out and fill them up with gifts for the kids, sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Pillowcases like sacks for. Sorry, that was a little bit of a jump there. Okay, so pillowcases like stockings on the mantelpiece. Got it.
Anyway, so my dad knew that as a little child, I was sort of obsessed with cowboys. Right? So I had this cowboy kind of outfit thing I wanted my dad to get me. And I'd shown it to him at the toy store and everything, and then I was so excited. Christmas morning, get up, and then we come in and jump on the bed. That's my brother and I, and then he gave me a soccer ball, and I remember just crying. I mean, that was because that was something he wanted me to have, because he was obsessed with sport, and I really wasn't. And he was always going on about who these different soccer players he knew and how they become professionals, and it really didn't interest me at all as a child. And then when he gave me this soccer ball, I started crying. He got really angry at me because he said, "Oh, you're being ungrateful," and everything. I was just a little child, right? You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's I don't know if that's pertinent to what you asked me, but that's a memory that sort of stays in my brain, right?
Yeah, no, that's a marker. I call them markers. It's just something that you remember because it has very great meaning, and it really does. So, do you remember your parents seeking out your thoughts and ideas and conversation? Like, oh, let's go for a walk, let's catch up, and what do you think of this, and what do you think of that? And, trying to pursue and understand what was going on in your head.
No.
Though that was very quick, and I'm not disagreeing with you. And how old are you now?
67 right now.
Right, okay. So, over the course of your life, how many people have shown great interest in your hidden thoughts and ideas and experiences and memories?
Yeah, I can't really think of too many. I can't really think of too many times that happened, because I just got into the habit of deferring.
You're setting other people up to talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and I understand that. So, how many people? So I asked you how many people. You said I can't really think of it happening too many times, which is a bit. It's funny because I have, after doing this for decades, a very finely tuned sense of evasion. Like, I know when people are kind of, I don't know if you've seen that meme where Homer Simpson just sort of backs away into the hedge, right?
No,
and so I know very clearly when people are dissembling or being evasive. And I'm not saying it's a conscious process or anything like that, but when people have a question they don't want to answer, they don't say to me, almost never say to me, "Steph, I don't want to answer this question. It makes me uncomfortable." What do they usually do?
Yeah, they'll make stuff up, right?
Well, they'll just give me a bunch of loosey-goosey fog. It's kind of like if you reach for an octopus underwater, what do? They jet out all this ink, and then they just slither away, right? And so a lot of times with people when they're talking, you ask them a question, they're not comfortable answering it, and rather than say directly, which is not easy to do, right? But rather than say directly, "Ooh, that kind of hits a nerve," or "I don't really want to answer that question," or "I have an urge to not answer that question," they do what psychologists call acting out. And what they do is, instead of saying, "I don't want to answer this question," they pretend to answer the question. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. I honestly, though, I wasn't actually trying to evade your question. Honestly, I was trying to.
No.
I don't have a perfect recall.
No. Now,
Okay.
see, now hang on. I'm sorry to be annoying. So then what they do is they pivot to intentions. So I'm going to question your level of self-knowledge. And look, we all have areas of self-knowledge we need to work on. So again, I say this with all humility. I'm going to question your area of self-knowledge Because what people do is when people don't want to answer a question, they will not answer the question indirectly, right? They'll just give me a bunch of syllables that don't add up to much. And then what they do is they claim intention and they say, well, I didn't mean to not answer your question, which is unverifiable. And of course, if you know everything about your motives, then you would have said to me, I don't really want to answer your question, rather than just not answer the question with a bunch of syllables. And then what they do, and I'm sorry to say, this is NPC predictability. Of course, I'm not saying you're an NPC. I'm just saying in this particular sequence, the pattern is very clear. So I ask a question, somebody's uncomfortable. They'll then give me a non-answer disguised as a question. I'll point that out. They'll say, I didn't mean to not answer. And then if I push further, or if they're on a roll, they do what you did at the end there, where you say, I don't have perfect recall, which is a non sequitur. I mean, so you're saying that I am demanding that you have perfect recall for the entirety of your 67 years. Of course, I'm not asking that, right? So that's an oddity to me, because nobody's ever asked you to have perfect recall. I'm not even sure if you remember what the question was. And if you do, if you could repeat it back, that would be helpful. I'm not trying to give you orders. It's just if you could.
Yeah, you asked me, you asked me for an example of somebody who had listened to me or asked questions.
I did not.
No?
I did not ask you
Okay.
for an example. I said, how many people over the course of your life have shown deep interest in your thoughts and feelings?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that's, I made a lot to actually answer that question.
One
I know
right
that sounds
now.
I know that sounds
Right now, there's one, right?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I think this is why you're calling back, right? So you can't think of people, and I'm sad for this, I really am, and you can't think of people who, and this is true for listeners, everyone asks this for yourself, it's important, right? You can't think of people over the course of your life who've shown deep interest in what you think and feel, is that right?
Yes.
Right. So what impression does that give you about how interesting you are?
Boy. Maybe I'm not interesting at all. Yeah. Good point.
I mean, do you have that experience? Do you feel like if you try to get people to talk, either you have to cue them up to speak because people love to talk, or you're not able to provide much value because people haven't shown much interest in you?
Oh boy. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like I don't know. I think I'm a pretty interesting person, but maybe I'm just, delusional.
Well, no, listen, I don't want to jump to conclusions. I don't know what the answer is. So that's a very interesting challenge, right? And I don't know the answer to this. If you are an interesting person, and honestly, I think the more honest we are, the more interesting we are, and the more direct we are, the more interesting we are. So if you are an interesting person, then why are people not interested? That's a big question. And I've asked myself this. So again, I'm right down here with in the trenches with you. But that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
If you are an interesting person, and over your 67 years, almost no one has shown interest in your thoughts and feelings, what does that mean? I don't know the answer to that, but there's something in your head that is putting things together to explain this. How could this be possible?
Well, I think I guess I've just sort of accepted it at this point.
Mm-hmm. Accepted what? You're interesting, but people aren't interested.
Well, I mean, we're all interesting to ourselves, right? So, it's kind of hard for me to sort of say, yes, I am interesting, or I'm not interesting, because
Well, you're interesting to yourself, but other people aren't interested. How do we explain that?
I don't know. That's a very deep question, I think. Or maybe it's not a deep question.
You're talking about Robert Pirsig. This is a pretty deep book, right? So And I'm happy to other people to chime in with comments about this as well. So in general, and maybe there's other options, but I think there's a fork in the road when we come across this kind of contradiction. I'm interesting, but people aren't interested in me. Either there's one of two possibilities. Well, three, I guess. Either A, I'm not interesting, but everyone's interesting because we all think and feel and have dreams and aspirations and ideas. So it's not true that you're not interesting. If people aren't interested in you, it's one of two things. Either you're bad at communicating and there's too much work for people to get to what's interesting about you, or what's the other option that could happen or could be?
Yeah, maybe I put people off somehow.
No, but that's the first one. So the first thing is that you're somehow not good at communicating, and therefore people can't burrow through to get through to what's interesting about you. It'd be like, I have a really great art gallery, but it's surrounded by landmines, barbed wire, and pit bulls. People are like, I don't know, I mean, maybe the paintings are good, but I'm not braving all of that, right? So it's too difficult for people to get to the art gallery. So one option is that you make it very difficult for people to find out what's interesting about you, but what's the other option? Nothing to do with insulting you, but what's the other option?
Maybe I'm just not. Maybe I'm just not interesting.
No, that's everyone's interesting. What's the other option? And the fact that this is hard to see is fascinating.
I don't know. What's your opinion? What's your idea on that?
Oh, it's not even an idea; it's a fact. So
Okay.
we eliminate that you're not interesting. The only other option, if you're good at communicating what you think and feel, the only other option as to why other people don't find you interesting is they're narcissistic, solipsistic, self-regarding assholes who wouldn't be interested in another person if they were on fire and holding a hamburger.
Okay.
That you are surrounded by people who are so self-absorbed they couldn't be interested in anyone other than themselves,
Okay.
i.e. your parents.
Right. Okay.
Everyone's your parents. And we do that, like when we have bad parents, and I'm not saying they were terrible, right? But when there's this selfishness of not being interested, you owe your children attention. As much as you owe them food and shelter, you must give your children attention. Like if I get some whippet or greyhound that desperately needs to be walked as my pet, I owe that dog to be walked. I owe it. And if I don't want to walk my dog, I have to give it to someone who will. So when you have children and you keep them at home, you owe them attention. And you owe them interest. That is a foundational deal with the universe that you make when you have children, because children can't get people to be interested in them who aren't their parents in general, unless they're creepy pedos or something like that, right? So if your parents are so self-absorbed that they can't show any interest in you, your tendency will be to hang around lots of people in your life who are also self-absorbed and cue them up to talk about themselves and not impose your thoughts or ideas on other people. And so my guess is because your parents didn't show interest in you, for your life, you tried unconsciously to normalize that behavior by surrounding yourself with other people who were self-absorbed and wouldn't show interest in you. And therefore, you ended up in the service of self-absorbed people, as most of us do, at least for some portion of our lives. You ended up in the service of other self-involved people by queuing them up the ability to talk about themselves, which is what narcissistic people love to do.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I mean that kind of explains. Do you remember that I called in on a call-in show? It was I had just finished listening to your episode where you were getting makeup put on your face by your daughter. I don't know if you remember that. And I called in and I said, I am very envious of your daughter. I wasn't envious of you. I was very envious of the interaction that she was having with her parent, with you. And now I think back on that and I think, okay, to me now that with this conversation we're having now, that kind of makes perfect sense for me now. Yeah.
So what your father should have done, in my humble opinion, all those years ago, is he should have got two presents for you. a small one and a big one. And you know what was in those two presents?
Well, there's probably one of those presents would have been what I wanted, what I asked him for, perhaps.
The cowboy outfit, right?
Yeah, and then the other one would have been a cricket bat or a soccer ball. Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry to be annoying. I am. I'm going back in time.
Okay.
I'm going back in time 60 years to fix your dad.
Okay.
What your dad, if you're really into cowboys, your father should have got you two presents. Number one, you ready for some emotion?
Yeah. Okay.
Number one, he should have got you a little cowboy outfit. Number two, he should have got himself a big cowboy outfit so that you and your dad could play cowboys together.
Oh boy, this is really getting to me now.
I'm telling you, I knew the floodgates would come because that's what your father should have. He shouldn't have met you halfway. Oh, well, fine, I'll give you that's fine. So for you, it was like my father should have got me a cricket bat or a soccer ball, but at least no. If your kid's into cowboys, what do you do as a parent? You get into cowboys. Right?
Yeah.
You go and you say, hey, tell me the cowboy stuff. What are we going to do? Let's go catch some Injuns. Let's go rescue the maiden from the train robbers. Let's go take down the sheriff who are the bad guys, right? Let's go rope some cattle. You go and make up the games for what your children love. Because you enter into their world and you get to learn what they like and why. And you validate that cowboys are interesting and they're a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm shaking a little bit here right now.
But wouldn't that be what a father would do?
Yes. Yeah.
We don't know what our kids are going to be interested in. My daughter has had interests that are incomprehensible to me, which is fine because I have interests that are incomprehensible to her. But I try to learn as much about what is interesting to her and try to enter into the world that she finds interesting so that I can both understand and validate that these things are interesting.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking right now.
Well, tell me what you're feeling. What are you thinking?
Oh. It's really hard for me to.
And I'm sorry he didn't do that. And I'm sorry that your mother didn't say, he's into cowboys. Go play cowboys together. Right? Isn't that what you should do? You know, my daughter's into makeup. And this is why it was emotional for you when I did the show with my daughter. My daughter's into makeup. So what do? I let her put makeup on me on a live stream. I don't even use makeup for my regular show. I know a lot of people in, quote, media do, right? So my daughter wants to do makeup. Fine. Let's do makeup, right? I'll find a way to enjoy it. And it was fun, I think. And so when your kids are into stuff, you go into their world.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh.
And it's always amazing, and I compliment your very big heart and sensitivity for this. It's a lovely thing to be a part of, and I really do appreciate your trust in this conversation. But isn't it amazing how fresh these wounds are 60 or more years later? Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it is.
You know, there's a guy in Japan who kept an apartment rented for 27 years. His wife was killed in the apartment. They couldn't find the killer. This was decades ago, of course. And he paid rent for 27 years. Do you know why?
To preserve his memory of his wife?
No.
Okay.
To preserve the evidence of the crime.
Oh boy.
And then eventually what happened was the DNA advanced to the point where they caught the killer. And he put hundreds of thousands of dollars of his money into keeping that apartment in a perfectly pristine state so that nobody went in or out. It was never rented out again. Nothing was ever cleaned. And then eventually, when the DNA had advanced enough, they were able to go in and catch the killer. And what I mean by that is the scene of the crime, the scene of the sadness, the scene of the tragedy was sealed off as if time passed outside of it, but never within. It was a little set of cubicles of frozen time, and that's kind of like our hearts with our childhoods. That when the disappointment and the sadness comes in, we seal it up, we wall it off, and we pay rent for the rest of our lives. And then somebody says, bro, let's go back in this room. Let's open the door. Let's go back in this room. Let's go back in this room. And you go into the room and you see your 6-year-old frame and the soccer ball being handed and your father getting angry. And you see it, and it's as fresh now as it was when it happened. And it's the same for you, and it's the same for me. And you deserved a father who would get you and him both cowboy outfits. And you deserved a father who would roll around with you as a cowboy, shouting yeehaw, shooting into the air, and rootin' tootin' everything that you could get your hands on. If you've ever seen the movie Parenthood, it's a very good movie, I think. With Steve Martin, he orders a clown to come, but the clown doesn't come. They send a stripper instead for his kid's party, and so he ends up being a cowboy. And of course, it's a completely impossible standard for parents because he's Steve Martin, who is one of the most brilliant comics of the past half century.
Yep.
And he just rolls into it and does it. And of course, when your kids say, my daughter went through playing kitty cat games. She did baby dragon games. We did a game called Smorg because I'd read her The Hobbit when she was very little. And so I was Smorg the dragon, and we piled a bunch of plastic jewelry up around my belly, and I curled up, and she had to come in and retrieve the jewelry without waking me up. This kind of thing, right? And so she'd come, and I remember she kept running. I would wake up and I would chase her, and she would go to a little corner of another room by the dresser where she would hide, and I'd pretend I couldn't find her, and I'd sniff, and then I'd go back to the bed, and then she'd come back and get more jewelry, and it was a great deal of fun. We actually played it with some friends of hers a couple of times. Anyway, I just remember one time I was chasing her. She must have been, I don't know, maybe 2.5, maybe 3. I was chasing her, and she'd had enough of running away from the dragon, and she turned around and she just clocked me in the thigh. It was like, dragon down, dragon Charlie horse, smoke down. And, it was like Bard with the bow at the end of The Hobbit. Boing! And, look, it's not like I'll do that on a regular basis, but that's what my daughter was into, and it was a great deal of fun. You just throw yourself in. You meet your children where they are, and I might say validate. It sounds very artificial or whatever. It's like, you want to play this? Yeah, we just made up this game. We used to play this game whenever we were at swimming pools, which was Smorg Says. And Smorg Says, so it would be like, and we do it with a bunch of kids, right? Because I worked in a daycare. I'm pretty good at whipping kids up to play a game together. So I'd be in, and I'd say, Smorg says that no child is allowed to be a drunken frog jumping into a pond. And of course, immediately they would be drunken frogs. And you just come up with whatever, right? Like Smorg says that you are not allowed to be a butterfly that falls asleep in the middle of a flight and falls into the water, or something like that. So they do all of the flapping and stuff like that. Smorg says no one is allowed to be a snake that gives birth and then falls into the water. Like whatever, you kind of come up with nonsense stuff. And then the kids would come up with their own, and sometimes I'd do it too, and all of that. And, it was just wonderful, for me at least, great memories. I know she still looks back upon that kind of stuff fondly. But I'm sorry, like you deserved a father who didn't try to impose his stuff on you. I tried to show my daughter computer programming at one point. Zero interest. Like zero interest. And that's fine. But she's also showed me games like the Among Us game, which we played a lot during COVID. And I'm not particularly great at that game. She's like a weird genius at this game. She's like Sherlock Holmes of the digital set. She knows where everyone is and who did what, and like she's just, it's all kind of like an abacus going on in her brain, whereas I'm just like, I think there was someone in electrical, but I can't remember, right?
Right.
So, yes, not my particular type of game, but man, did we have a lot of fun playing with friends, especially when we were kind of locked up at home. So I'm really sorry, of course, that your father gave you the impression that you're not interesting or that you need to serve what other people are interested in. Because what that does, of course, is it generally brings you into the circle of people who are kind of self-obsessed, right? So earlier in the conversation, and I say this again without a single shred of negativity or criticism or anything like that. We're all struggling how to communicate better, right? But at the conversation, when things were floundering and I was having trouble finding value in what you were saying, after we talked about Robert Heinlein, but before we talked about Persig, I think it was, or maybe after Persig, but before the tiger, you asked me, you said, well, Steph, what are books that you like? Or what are books that you would recommend? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was, I'm not providing value. Okay, how will I provide value? I will queue up Steph for a speech.
Right.
I will serve Steph. I will serve his wanting to talk about. And I found it odd because it seemed to kind of come out of nowhere. I just sort of make a bookmark of it and I'm like wanted to return to it. And again, this is nothing critical about this. I say this, with great compassion and hopefully a reasonable amount of empathy. But when you were trying to provide value, you were having trouble providing value, not because you're not interesting, but because you just have been around a lot of selfish people. So then there was kind of like a little bit of a panic and well, Steph, you talk about books you like. And then that was supposed to cue up me to then, books that I like, let me go through the list. And then you'd be providing value by queuing me up a topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
But it didn't feel particularly organic, which I know sounds kind of ridiculous. It just doesn't feel quite organic, like I can tell a strawberry that's grown in a lab. But I didn't want to do that because I felt that there was something quite important to talk about, which we all struggle with.
Yeah.
Conversation is a balance, and it's tricky, and it's a complicated, I don't want to talk too much. I don't want other people to talk too much. We want to connect and try and enhance each other's visibility to each other in the world, especially a public conversation like this. And so I don't want to impose the British thing. At the same time, I don't want to just stare there glassy-eyed while someone talks about their own nonsense forever and ever. Amen. And that's a challenge, and it is a big challenge for sure. And I'm sorry that you didn't have a father who, if he could go all out and get a female Western outfit for your mom, and then she could be the bartender, slinging beers down the, when you guys come back from hoeing the back 40 or wrestling the rodeo or whatever cowboys do. I'm not a big knowledgeable guy about cowboys, but actually I did the truth about the Wild West. It's a pretty good presentation I did, but yeah. So, you should have had that, and your parents should have met you where you were interested and engaged in the worlds that you had in your mind, so that you feel like you go out into the world and the contents of your mind have value to others and you're confident in putting those forward. And if you can do that, and I know you can, then people will be interested. But it's kind of a circular thing. If you think you're not of value, then you're very abstract and you don't think about the other person too much. And then it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right. After saying conversation is a balance, I'll shut up and ask you how you're doing.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you so much. Honestly, allowing me, I don't know how you did that, guiding me through that, into that memory. And I'm still shaking, actually. I'm still feel like I'm going to start sobbing at any second.
And what's wrong with that? That's interesting. I hate to say that's interesting, but that's your genuine experience, right? And it's a beautiful thing.
No, my dad criticized me. I remember this as well. One time he got really angry and he criticized me. He said, "Stop being so sensitive." And it just fucking devastated me, right? And
do you remember the circumstance?
Oh, we were out, all I remember is that we were outside. He was taking me somewhere or something, and I don't have, that's, other than that, I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were. I was quite young. But I do remember the words, and that memory is etched into my mind. And it really kind of was like I don't know, it just sort of set me off on this path of isolation, I guess, you know?
Do you know the most likely reason why he said, "Don't be so sensitive"?
Well, I've mentioned this before to you that I found, I discovered that he was very vain. He was sort of, a very vain person. And I became very embarrassed. He took me to he was into acting and stuff, like plays and all this kind of stuff. And he took me one time to watch him do this single solo thing. He's sitting on a chair on a stage, and it's a soldier's story or something about a deck of cards. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it included like a deck of cards and then some story he was saying. And I was so embarrassed by it because I thought, here you are playing this part of this sort of very deep and sensitive sort of story. And then I knew that this was just this didn't square with my own experience of him, right? And I don't know, I don't know, that doesn't really answer the question you asked.
Sorry, and was he doing it like in an actual theater, or was it?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so he was an actor.
Yeah.
It sort of reminds me of Henry Fonda. Was a very famous actor, of course, on Golden Pond and The Grapes of Wrath, and just in a whole bunch of movies. And he was very emotionally accessible on screen and almost completely emotionally inaccessible at home. I think it was Peter Fonda or Jane Fonda or someone was just talking about how cold and inaccessible and unemotional their father was. So, right. So, sorry, if there's something else you wanted to mention?
No, I just that other memory popped into my head as we were going through this, that memory of him criticizing me for my sensitivity, right? And that's a memory that kind of really deeply hurt me. And then sort of, I think that's why I started kind of falling in love in some sense with sort of these fictional characters like Clint Eastwood, these loner types. I became like really obsessed with loner types. And I remember even as a child, I started fantasizing about, I used to watch Doctor Who as a child, and I know, but I started fantasizing about having a TARDIS of my own where I could just take off in this thing to a different place because I didn't feel like it belonged.
Yeah, I remember growing up in London, they had the double-decker buses, and I'm sure maybe it's different now, but when I was a kid, they would have a little sealed-off area for the bus driver, and they would have a curtain.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, what a great job. I'd just be sealed off from everyone, still to be something useful and productive. I'd get to see the world, but I wouldn't have to interact with anyone.
Right.
Now, maybe it's changed now. I'm sure that the bus drivers now take the coins or the tokens or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But back then, you had a bus. There was a conductor, right? The conductor would go and check the tickets. And this guy just sealed off, walled off, like in an isolation tank of guidance or driving or, I could take people the right route. Nobody would ever talk to me. I'm completely sealed off. Lovely. Now here it is. I work alone guiding the world, right? I should build a little bus alcove around me or something like that. But yeah, no, it was lovely. That's my Catcher in the Rye moment, and wouldn't that be? And then I went through this strange obsession. It's not that strange, I guess. I went through this obsession for years as a kid that I had to count the number of exhausts every car had that went by.
Seriously?
Some had one, some had two. I think Volkswagen Bugs had four. It was complete OCD for years to have to count the exhaust Anyway, that's a topic for another time, because don't want to delve into that right now. But the most likely reason, I think, why your father would say, stop being so sensitive, is he'd been an asshole and hurt you.
Right.
And then rather than say, ooh, I'm so sorry, because he felt bad, but he wouldn't self-criticize. So the badness wasn't in what he did to hurt you, but in you being hurt.
Yeah.
You know, if a man punches his son, he's desperately afraid the son's going to get a black eye. For obvious reasons, right? People are going to say, hey, where did the black eye come from, or something like that. In other words, it's not the hurt, it's the evidence of the hurt that matters.
Right.
And
Right.
so if your father was thoughtless, cold, cruel, selfish, whatever it is, right? Then he's going to say stuff that is going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Of course. And then when you're crying, he has a choice. He can say, ooh, that's not good for me to make my child cry, right? Or he can say, the problem is not what I did to make my child cry. The problem is my child crying.
Right.
And you have to stop being hurt.
Right.
Which means I'm not going to stop hurting you. I'm just going to blame you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if some asshole punches his wife and it breaks one of his knuckles, he's going to get angry at her. Look what you made me do. You know, that kind of stuff, right? It's very primitive, very almost like ape-like in terms of its projection.
Yeah. Very much so.
So he felt bad. And people who are selfish, when they hurt others, they view other people as the aggressors, or people who don't have genuine emotions themselves. And one of the most important genuine emotions is empathy. So people who don't have genuine emotions themselves always think that other people are faking it.
Right.
Oh, you're not that hurt. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. You know, oh, don't play it up.
Right. Right.
Because they don't have genuine emotions themselves, so they assume everybody else's emotion is manufactured, is manipulative, is faked. You know, right?
Right. Yeah. Wow. Holy crap. Holy moly. You know, it's weird. Like,
I like holy moly. That's the first two syllables of my last name. Anyway, go on. It is a weird kind of inspiration that leads me down these paths, but go on.
It was when years later, I bumped into this guy. I lived on the south coast of England, right? So, you have the promenade, and you have like all these different things along the promenade and everything. And I bumped into this guy. He was older guy. Anyway, and we struck up a conversation and stuff or whatever, and ended up having a game of chess. And he says, "Are you Rowley's son?" And I was like shocked because that was my dad's name. And
wait, we've got a holy, a moly, and a roly. What are we about to start rapping here? Sorry, go on.
And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he was like, "Oh my God," he was a real man about town. And I was like, "Holy crap! Like, what am I hearing here?" Right? And he had nothing good to say about him. And I was
Sorry,
like, "Really?"
Just a man about town. Does that mean he slept around a lot?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And he was sort of like a flashy guy kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of the impression I was left with when hearing about that. And it was horrifying. I mean, but, at the same time, it wasn't that surprising, I suppose. But nevertheless, it's like, ugh, I wish I hadn't bumped into this guy because,
Sorry, what was help me? I mean, I get a sense of a lot of Paisley because it was the 60s, right? So what? You were born in 61, right? So
58.
58. Look at my math. All right. And what What was horrifying about that?
Well, I guess it confirmed a lot of the thoughts I had about my father, but that was only my own memories of when I was a child, and then I bump into this guy, and then he tells me about what my father was like from an adult point of view, from his own point of view, because he was obviously a similar age to my dad, and that filled in the other half of this sort of sinking, horrible feeling I had about my own dad.
Okay, but I still don't know what was sinking and horrible about your dad being a man about town. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just want to make sure I understand from your perspective what was horrible about it.
Well, it wasn't just the man about town thing. It was just his opinion of my dad was so kind of negative. And
so did he have like contempt or disgust?
Yeah.
And do you know why? I know why. Do you know why?
I don't know why.
Because your dad seduced his wife or girlfriend.
Oh, maybe.
I mean, come on. Why would you be so upset? Some guys cruising around town trying to pick up women or whatever, unless it hit you, sister, wife, girlfriend. So your dad slept with someone he cared about and maybe cut him out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or maybe your dad slept with someone he cared about. Your dad gave her an STD. She gave him an STD. But there's some reason there's that visceral disgust, and it's more than just some abstract moral reasoning.
Yeah, right.
Don't you wish you could have a time machine and just go back and get all the facts? Oh, wouldn't that be great?
In some sense, yeah, I do wish that. Yeah, and on the other side, that thought kind of terrifies me as well at the same time.
Mm.
I mean, I don't know.
I even thought of this woman today. There's a friend of mine who died young. His mother's still alive, or was the last time I checked. And every now and then I'm like, before she goes, I'd like to call and find out exactly what happened. But again, I don't want to rip open these own wounds. Anyway, this is one of the reasons I write novels, is that I can go back and get all the threads and understand all the causality, because it's really tough in life.
Yeah, right.
All right. Listen, brother, I've got another couple of callers. I just really wanted to thank you for a very, very interesting call. See, look at that. Fantastic. Great job. Great job. All right. Sir Cheddarman, I guess it's evening of the return callers. If you would like to. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Hey, Steph. Sorry, I was engaged with the other caller, and suddenly now my turn. So I have a question. I think it's a big question. Which is would you it's about decisions, and I was wondering if you could define and clarify for me the difference in particular between impulsive decisions and irrational decisions. And I also I like to do the same thing for the opposites of impulsive decisions and irrational decisions.
So impulsive decisions generally are things you lie about afterwards, and irrational decisions are things you lie about yourself beforehand. To give you very general and broad characteristics. So if you have an impulsive decision and it turns out to be a bad one, then you'll usually lie afterwards about why you did what you did, or blame other people or whatever, right? If you have an irrational decision, it means that you're lying about it ahead of time. So I'll give you an example of the latter. And I think every man alive, and women too, but mostly it's a sausage fest tonight. So okay, let me ask you this. Have you ever been very physically attracted to a woman and then tried to invent other qualities so that you feel less animalistic dating her?
I've thought about it, but I never acted on it because of exactly that. It's because of the falsehood of it. I really dislike that. So
because of the what? Sorry, because of the what of it?
I said falsehood.
Falsehood. I'm sorry. I thought you said faucet. I didn't quite follow that. My bad. Okay,
No worries.
but I think most men, you've looked at some woman, she's sexy or hot or whatever it is, and maybe you go talk to her or whatever, and maybe she's not that smart, but you're like, I'm sure there's something, maybe she's really caring, or maybe she's really thoughtful, or maybe, you just make up stuff because you don't want to say to yourself, I'm only interested in her body or her face or both or whatever, right? So that would be an example of an irrational decision, which is you want to date her and you're just making up virtues so you don't feel, as you say, it's kind of dishonest with the self and so on, right? I mean, I remember once talking to a woman I met at a conference, just so good looking, and I don't know objectively, but just my particular type. And I went for lunch with her, I took her for lunch, and we then went for a walk, and God, she was boring. Oh my God. I was like,
oh, no.
Please God, give me something. I'm not asking for a lot. Anything that's not just empty NPC talk or whatever, right? And then, she wasn't trying to be, she was interested in me and was willing to go for lunch and all of that. And, I tried for I think we did, 45 minutes for lunch, 45 minutes for walking. And then we went back to the conference and I was like, I can't even though she was perfectly my type. And I was just come on, maybe she's just having an off day. Maybe this, maybe that. And I'm like, and I think it was the same thing with you. It's like, no, I can't. I can't. And so on. Right. So, I would say in general, impulsive decisions, they're not really decisions. And what you do is you lie about them afterwards. So I don't know if you've seen, there's a video, there's this wasp waist fellow clavicular who's into looks maxing, right? Which is he smashes himself with,
I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, ball peen hammers and to strengthen his jaw. And he says, you got to get hair transplants. No hair, no life. I'm sorry?
I think he has a wig, right?
I don't know if he's got a wig. He's a big fan of hair transplants. I mean, he's got nice hair.
Oh, really?
And so on. And he does these, obviously semi-trashy videos. It's all like night parties, bottle service, and buxom bikini babes and stuff like that. It's all pretty demonic, the manosphere stuff, like where you can't just be masculine. You also have to be masculine, like a caricature, like a cartoon with like bimbos around you and stuff like that.
Also dominating too.
Yeah, I'm watching in bits this Louis Theroux documentary about the manosphere. And it's very, very dishonest, extremely dishonest. All he does is stand around looking shocked while pretending to be objective, as opposed to genuinely being curious about what's going on. And then he lies about it because somebody talks about how he's polygamous, but his girlfriend has to be monogamous. And he's like, and then it's like, "Oh, you shocked?" "No, I'm not shocked." So he pretends to be objective, and it's all very predictable and silly and manipulative. And of course, he just goes to the extremes. And he says this in the documentary. He says, there's a big, broad spectrum in the manosphere. I'm just drawn towards the real extremes. And that is very dishonest to take. Yes, it's very dishonest to take an entire movement that has a bell curve of normalcy to extremity and just go straight to the extremities. It's a great way to just discredit a movement. Now, that having been said... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say also the way he frames it, because he's like, I know I'm going to focus on the exaggerated part, but let me make all this time and seem as if it's important. Because if he did a short on it, then I would kind of believe him more. He's like, I have this interest. But it's like, if it's going to be, how long is the documentary?
I think it's 1:40, something like that.
Yeah, that's quite the commitment for something that's insignificant. Every group, every society has their extremes. So it's kind of interesting that he decides to focus on the extremes of the extremes when, I don't know, it seems to me quite dishonest.
Well, it would be like saying that the entire female liberation movement is characterized by the hashtag kill all men and the scum. There was a scum manifesto, I think it was in the 70s, and scum stood for the Society for Cutting Up Men, and saying it's very silly. And that having been said, some of the content that he does is pretty ferocious and I think pretty unpleasant and so on. But anyway, so Clavicular was in a club yesterday or today or something like that. The video I think just came out today. And there's this woman who slaps him hard. And then she
Oh.
says, F you. And she's really feral. And you could see this wounded animal, aggressive beast thing. And then she gives this shit-eating grin
Right.
and does the little heart thing, this kind of stuff.
Oh, God. Oh.
Anyway, so he says, Clavicular says, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue your family. And he uses his security to prevent her from leaving the area because he's called the
really?
police. Now, it's challenging and complicated, and I don't know the full footage, but from what I've read, he also says basically something like, "Go on, hit me." Now, that's challenging, right? Because if you dare someone to hit you and they slap you, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, this is my idiot amateur understanding, but my understanding is that if you say to someone, "I dare you to hit me," right? I mean, think of those, what do they do, tortillas, where they just whack you in the face and stuff like that, right? It's kind of goofy and kind of silly, right? Like you can't spit on people, but if you're playing that, make the other person laugh and see if they spit on you, that's a different matter. That's a game, right? It's like play wrestling or whatever.
Right.
And so if he did, in a sense, quote, dare this woman to hit him, then you can't consent to grievous bodily harm. You can't consent, like if she really bruises you or scratches you or something. If it's just a welt and a slap, I don't know if you can really make that stick from a criminal assault standpoint. I mean, if she just slaps you out of nowhere, that's definitely assault. If you're saying, "No, go ahead, hit me," right?
Well,
and then she hits him.
I would,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry about that. I would say, like, for example, where he could have a case is like, he says, "Go on, hit me," and then she like stomps on his shin or something and breaks it and like stomps it as hard or on her, like something like that, where I think that could be where it's like excess. But
Well, no, but
from my
hang on,
understanding,
but we're talking about the actual video. She just slaps him.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, she slaps him, and it's hard, but I don't know that it would really amount to grievous bodily harm or injury or anything like that. So I don't know. Now, Clavicular himself says, he says, "I'm the worst kind of person to do this to." I'm paraphrasing, right? But he says something like,
Right.
"I'm going to sue her, and I'm going to sue her family." And I don't know how the family steps in, but I'm going to sue her, and I'm willing to lose money, and I'm just going to ruin her, and I'm the worst person to do this to because I will just do it despite a loss. I will pursue it to the ends of the earth and whatever it is, right? And he tells her right away.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's complicated legally, again, amateur understanding, but if he said, "Go on, hit me," and then she hits him, then that may not be illegal. That may be considered a dare or a wrestle or a voluntary roughhousing or something like that, right? And
Right.
I mean, there's a principle in law, which is sort of mutual combat. Like once two people just sit there and say, "We're going to have it out," right? It's kind of
Right,
tough
right.
to say who's at fault legally. And so
Right.
if what she did was not illegal, but then he used his security to confine her, it might be a switcheroo. Again, what do I know? I'm just a podcaster, but it's an interesting legal question. So let's say that he goaded her, she hit him. Now, I think that is, and tell me if it's not in the category for you, I think that's an impulsive action. Right? He says, "Hit me," and she cracks him, right? So that's an impulsive action. Now, is she going to take responsibility later and say, "Ooh, you know what? I am too impulsive. That was the wrong thing to do. I did the wrong thing. I'm going to apologize." Or what is she more likely to do? And again, I'm not speaking about this woman in particular because I don't know her from Adam. But when people do something like that, someone says, "Go on, hit me." What? Now, I didn't hear him say hit her. I didn't hear him say hit me, but people were saying that's what he said beforehand, and it may be edited. So again, I don't know what the facts of the matter. If you just cracked him out of nowhere, yeah, absolutely call the cops. People should not be doing that. People should not be getting away with that kind of stuff. Now, if, though, she just hit him impulsively, what is she most likely to do afterwards to herself to talk about what happened?
Oh, like probably make an excuse or justification. Maybe
Exactly.
like he deserves it, or he thinks he's so good looking. I showed him.
Well, and he
example.
disrespects women. I'm standing up for women. He had it coming.
Yeah.
I've seen him mistreat people. Like she's going to come up, and we all have this habit. I'm not right, but she's
I have
most
this habit
likely.
too.
Yeah, everyone does, right? So most likely, she is going to lie about what happened afterwards, again, without the legal stuff, like assuming that she just cracked him. And again, I don't know what happened, the whole circumstance, but if she just cracked him and she's in the wrong, she's most likely to lie about it with other words. And she's going to have all these people, all these friends. What are her friends going to say to her? You're a hero. He had it coming. He's such a pig, blah, 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 right? You go, girl, right? Girl power, whatever nonsense they're going to say, right? So impulsive actions, people will generally lie about it afterwards. Irrational decisions, people usually lie themselves into it. So you lie to escape negative consequences of impulsivity, or you lie in order to pursue irrational goals ahead of time. And I think that's, if I had to guess, I think that's somewhat the difference between impulsive decisions and irrational decisions.
Yeah. No, that helps a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna think this over. But would it be too much to ask to then talk about their opposites and how they're similar and different? Or should
sorry, what do you mean by their opposites? What's the opposite of an impulsive action?
I think it would be a deliberate decision. Or I was saying deliberate impulsive decision.
No, it's when you tell the truth.
That,
sorry. So it's not the action, it's the lying. So an impulsive action, if it's not bad, like you're walking down the street and you have an impulse to give someone who's hungry some food or whatever it is, right? Okay, maybe you have an impulse. Okay, but you don't have to lie about it.
Yeah.
Right. And if you say, well, like for me, I'm like, okay, it's 6:30. I've got to go down. I've got to set everything up. And I still get everything wrong. I forgot to turn the mic on at the beginning of this for X or whatever, right? But so that's planned action and so on. But I have to lie to myself about it. The impulsive actions and the irrational actions to me are defined by lying about it ahead of time or lying about it after the fact. If you tell the truth about it after the fact, or you tell the truth about it ahead of time, I think that they would not. I think that would be the real opposite, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, actually, I agree with you. Yeah,
I like that note of surprise. Okay, I'll take one more caller, and I really appreciate it. It's a great question. Thank you. And I'm going to be quite fascinated to see this clavicular thing. I think he should hold people to account for sure. All right, Nerd ankles. If you want to unmute, I'm happy to take a question.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so I don't even really know how to get into all this. I have a kind of tense familial dynamic going on here, and I'll be going to like a family meeting with my father and my sisters tomorrow. I'm just kind of seeking advice of kind of how to handle all this. So both my parents are they're older. They're in their 60s now. And my father has had cancer pretty recently and heart surgeries. And so he's not doing well. And I found out my mother had Alzheimer's last year. So anyway, my my issues with because I've just recently moved back home. I've been gone for many years, and just seeing how my sisters treat my father. They both still live with my parents, which is kind of the issue. Just how to approach it, because they're very, in my opinion, I've always had kind of problems bringing this up, but I finally got with my dad, and I just can't stand how they treat him and I guess manipulate him, and I think he's just overly compassionate about it and like a pathological altruist or something. It's just it's just affecting their health, and it's just everything. And I don't know. I know they're very apprehensive of me showing up tomorrow because I'm not as, I guess, compassionate as my father. And I don't know. They're both smart. They're both well, manipulative with their words and was trying to figure out how to maybe help them, figure out a situation for my mom, help with my mom instead of always worrying about themselves. And do whatever, I go help and do whatever I can, but I also live an hour away. But yeah. Yeah, so that's tomorrow. So
Okay, and sorry, just help me expand a little bit upon this pathological altruism. How does it show up?
it seems like whatever they need, he'll just do it. Like he's like a people pleaser, and he's admitted this to me as an adult now.
Sorry, the he refers to who? Your father or someone else?
Himself as a people pleaser.
Okay, so your father is a people pleaser.
Yeah. So I think he'll just always kind of go above and beyond, or whatever they want or they need. It's always their
Okay,
needs.
they refers to who here?
My sister, sorry.
Your sister. Okay.
Yeah.
So they is your sister and her husband or someone else?
Oh no, it's sisters. They
Sisters.
both
Okay,
still live.
sorry.
They
Okay.
both still live with my parents. Yeah.
And how old are your sisters?
Let's see. So I'm the eldest. I'm the only son. So my middle sister's 35, and the youngest is 30.
Why on earth are they living with your parents?
Well, they claim many, I guess, diseases, and
Oh no.
yes, like my sister was sick. The middle one, was sick. I guess she's got chronic Lyme or something, which I can
Like Lyme
empathize
disease,
with
that's what you
her.
mean, right?
Do what now?
Like Lyme disease?
Yeah, but it was chronic. I guess they didn't know what was wrong with her for so long. So I guess it can affect you in certain ways, but
No, Lyme
it's
disease
always
is horrible. Yeah, I mean, I've known one or
Yeah.
two people with it, and it can be pretty brutal.
yeah, and
And is
I've
that
seen
the sorry? Is that the 35-year-old?
Yes,
Okay. And when did she get Lyme disease?
they think it was in her teenage years somewhere,
Wow.
but it was, I guess, misdiagnosed for quite a time.
Okay.
But for me, it's she just comes out with more and more, I guess, symptoms, or like a new disease or a new something, to essentially just use my father, and I can see it crushing him, because she will like berate him to the side, and little jabs, and like kind of just really disrespect him. I just can't. I don't know. It really bothers me that this happens.
Okay, so
Yeah.
she's disrespectful to your father, is that right?
Yeah, incredibly, yes. Yep.
And has she been sick since her teens?
Just on and off. Yeah, it just seems like she'll be fine, and then it'll be, I don't know. Like I said, I'm older. I moved away. I joined the military. I've been gone for a long time. So
Sorry, so she's been out in the world and then symptoms strike. Do you know what her symptoms are as a whole?
she says she has POTS, so I know there's like some sort of dizziness to that, and headaches. But like I said, she is twice divorced as well, and her daughter lives with them. So she has left, but she's back, and she's been back for quite a time now.
Okay. Is the POTS related to Lyme disease?
I don't believe so.
So she just has these two separate conditions that produce these negative symptoms?
Yeah, but
Oh, it
I
says
know.
yes. Sorry, AI says yes. That is,
Okay.
POTS is related to Lyme disease in a meaningful way, particularly as a potential complication or overlapping condition. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So does she get better and then worse, or is it mostly bad, or you said it comes and goes?
Yeah, I mean, she'll say she'll be doing bad, and then I'll show up and she's just like, I don't know, hanging out and let my parents raise her kid, and she's just like watching TV, and so I'm just like, how bad is it? Because she'll say, "Oh, I got all these other things. I have ADHD and autism and MS, and nothing is like she has no diagnosis for these
Multiple
things."
sclerosis, isn't that's pretty, I mean, that's very serious, and doesn't that advance? I'm not the doctor,
no,
but
she claims these things. These are undiagnosed. It's like Munchausen syndrome or something. I don't know.
hang on. Sorry, what do you mean undiagnosed? What are you talking about?
I'm saying is she claims these things.
Okay.
As in,
So she's claiming the Lyme disease and the POTS and the ADHD and the autism, but I mean, I assume that she's been to doctors and tried to get treatment.
so as far as I know, the Lyme disease is the only officially diagnosed out of what she claims is with her.
Okay.
Sorry for
No, that's fine. That's fine. And it's funny because the last thing you ever want to do is accuse genuinely ill people of malingering, right? Because that's cruel and mean. And everyone
Right.
knows that. The problem is, though, some people will pretend to be sicker than they are in order to avoid responsibility, dominate conversations, or get their way. And
Yes.
the one thing that I've really noticed, and this is not anything to do with your sisters, because like, oh, your sister, what do I know, right? But I will say this. There always seems to be a particular personality type that has chronic conditions.
Mhm.
I've never seen a genuinely positive and optimistic person with good emotional regulation and social skills become chronically ill in these vague, ill-defined ways. And it doesn't mean anything other than that's just my observation, that the chronically ill always seems to come with neurosis, dominance, narcissism, exploitation, ill temper. Now, we could say, yes, but they're ill-tempered, of course, because they're chronically ill, and that's unpleasant, and I get all of that. So my point is just that, of course, there are chronic ailments and chronic illnesses, and they're very tough to deal with. But I have noticed, again, just completely anecdotal, doesn't mean anything, doesn't prove anything, but I just have noticed over the course of my life, it's always a particular personality type. And it's usually a pretty dysfunctional personality type that seems to end up with these chronic, ill-defined, untreatable ailments.
Yes, that's what I was trying to explain to my father too. Is I think where does legitimate suffering end and like some pathological delusion begin for a crutch for not having to rely on herself or someone else. She's just, just easing him up, and he's just sick and tired and old.
Well, and if people, I'm not saying, of course, I can't diagnose anyone, and I'm not talking about your sister, but if people are hypochondriacs, which is where they have a lot of illnesses that they experience as real or put forward as real, and that they can't find any particular biological basis, it's very treatable. That's the funny thing about it. So some things are really tough to treat, like borderline personality disorder. Nobody knows how to fix it. And narcissism is really tough to fix. And so certain criminal things just, you can't fix them and so on. But there's other things like OCD and various phobias and hypochondria, bulimia, eating disorders, very hard to treat. But things like hypochondria, it's actually quite easy to treat. It's not even that long. Generally, it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and, the majority of people move out of that category, and they've even done follow-up studies for up to 2 years where the symptom relief has maintained itself. So again, I'm not saying your sister's a hypochondriac, because what do I know? But I'm just saying that it's sort of like if I had a racing heart from time to time and really freaked out and so on, and somebody said, well, it could be that you have a heart defect, or it could be that you're having panic attacks. I would really choose the panic attack, because much less dangerous, right? And if I had chronic, unresolved, blah, 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 health stuff, I would say maybe I've got into a mindset of hypochondria, right? Because what can happen is if you have long-term health issues, you start to focus on them and you start to obsess about them. Are they better? Are they worse? And sometimes you just need some help to break out of that mindset and kind of continue on with your life. So if I had sort of chronic, unresolved health issues, I would be absolutely thrilled if it turned out to be I was hypochondriac. I was a hypochondriac, because that's pretty treatable in a way that really chronic health issues, if it's not anything to do with being hypochondriacal, then you can't really treat them. Like it's really the last stop off the treatment wagon is if you got this chronic stuff. I would go straight to a psychologist who was an expert in treating people who might be hypochondriacs, and I would throw myself into everything, because that would be it would be fantastic news if it turned out it was in my head. However, I will say this: people who are hypochondriacs, I mean, and I say this having, in my view, grown up with one, what happens if you say, perhaps there's a psychological element to your ailments? What do they say? I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're connected. So generally what they say is they get very angry and they accuse you of not being supportive and blaming them, and they get, in my experience, every single time. Again, that's just anecdotal. I get it's not a study, right? But people who have chronic health conditions and they can't find some obvious biological cause, right? So people have chronic health conditions, they need psychological help. And yet the people, and even if they don't have any kind of hypochondria, they still need psychological help to deal with this. And yet I have found that almost everyone, I can't think of a single exception, people with chronic health issues massively resist talk therapy. They massively resist something like cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's kind of suspicious to me, because if you could help your chronic health conditions by going to a psychologist, wouldn't you do that? Even if it was just a 1 in 100 shot. It's going to help you no matter what. And wouldn't it be a great thing? But I have found that the more people have chronic, ill-defined health issues, the more incredibly hostile they are when people say, you should see a psychologist, just to rule out if maybe it's locked into hypochondria or there's some element of that, because it could give you significant relief. So, I mean, again, I can't tell you what to do. If I were in your shoes, I would say to my sister, you've got these health issues, you should really talk to a therapist, because there's lots of expertise on how to manage these health issues and how to deal with these health issues. I mean, I tried this with my own mother, right? I said, okay, your health issues are real, but, library's right across from the Pizza Hut. Let's go and pick out a book on stress, and we'll read it together, and we'll figure out if there's anything you can do to help manage the stress of these chronic ailments. Which makes me very suspicious. But anyway, that's my ramblings. What is it that you would like help with in particular for tomorrow?
I guess how to help my father and getting them to get a plan together to move out together, or because they're not really helping my parents. Like, even though, like, when I come there and help, they're just usually, my sisters are usually just sitting in their rooms, and my niece might just be running around. My parents are working outside or something, so I come there and do what I can. And I guess it's like a plan to help them, because my dad said they're already very hostile and defensive, knowing that I'm going to be there.
Well, sorry, and we didn't get to you've got the 35-year-old with the Lyme disease and POTS and so on. and the autism and the MS and the ADHD or whatever it is. What is the story with your 30-year-old sister? What is her reason for continuing to live with your parents?
I mean, she claims to also be disabled, and she's a recluse. She's an artist. She's actually a very good artist, but I really don't know. She's very not impersonal kind of person, but she just basically just makes excuses and won't grow up. And I tell my dad it's like some sort of arrested development. She uses pity against him, and I know that. I have nothing to me. I have nothing. Blah blah blah. I'm a disabled girl, and I tell him, I'm like, why is she even calling herself a girl? She's 30 years old. It's just, I don't know. It's bizarre to me how they treat my parents, and they've done basically everything for them, and it's just it upsets me a lot because I just can't stand the nitpicking, the jabs, I'm like these people do everything for you. Well, why are you mistreating them? You're in their house. At least listen to their rules, or help or do something. Like, it's just very frustrating. And I know they know that I'm coming tomorrow, and they've already, like I've stated, is, oh, if he says something I don't want to hear, I'm going to leave. That's what my father was telling me. They were
Sorry,
saying,
your sister wants to leave when you're coming?
or during the meeting, like, she'll get up and leave. She's saying if I confront her piece or something.
Okay.
So,
and
yeah, it's a very
how could I best help you with what you want to achieve? Because the odds of you changing this situation are very low.
That's what I figured.
I mean, they get to not have any responsibilities. They get to not be out there in the rough and tumble and hurly-burly of life, right? They get to live on as eternal teenagers, in a sense. I mean, and clearly that's what they want, and that's what your parents want. So when everybody wants something, it's pretty hard for them not to get it.
Well, I know my father wants them out at this time. At least he's expressed it to me. And it's always just kind of existed. Like, he's always kind of wanted the middle child out because she's so difficult. She's very, you're going to hear what I say, but I don't want to hear what you say.
Yeah, but she has a child, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if she leaves, or if she's threatened to, like, you have to leave, what's she going to say? She's going to say, I have no place to go. I can't earn a living. What's going to happen to your grandchild? I mean, isn't that what she's going to do?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the reason why she's not out.
Okay. So what is your dad going to do? Is he going to call her bluff, change the locks, and say good luck? I mean, that would be a pretty extreme thing to do. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. I don't know. But is he going to do that?
I doubt that.
Okay.
Yes.
And what about the artist? She's going to say, I have no income. I have no boyfriend. I have no life. I have nowhere to go, right? She's going to pull, as you say, the pity strings, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, did they go out into the world and come back? I guess the eldest did, right?
Yeah, so she's divorced twice. So she never really, I mean, she kind of did in spurts, but it's mainly with my parents.
Okay. So you would not want that kind of life, either as a father or as a child, right? You wouldn't want to be 35 and sitting on your dad's couch doing nothing, but being tired and being manipulative and aggressive and all of that. So that's not a life that you would want, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
And you wouldn't want the life of your youngest sister, who's socially isolated, awkward, artistic, going nowhere kind of thing, right?
Yeah, correct.
So one of the big challenges in life is recognizing that there are people out there who want lives that you and I couldn't stand, but they're reasonably content with. And I know it's kind of weird. I have trouble with this, and I'm, I think, older than you by quite a bit, right? I probably got 20 years on you, right? So
Yeah.
I still find it tough. I have people I've known over the course of my life who make choices absolutely incomprehensible to me, and they keep making those choices. And I say, if I were in their shoes, I would be clawing at this like a ferret in an overturned aquarium trying to dig its way out. I would be running away from this like a rabbit away from a fox. I would be doing anything I could to not be in that kind of situation and to have that kind of life. And yet they don't change. And it is part of the glorious diversity of human existence that there are going to be people out there, and I'm sorry that they're so close to you, who are going to make decisions that absolutely are like nails on a chalkboard. Oh my God, how could you live like that? How could you live like that? How can you waste your life? How can you do this? How you can, my God. And it's tough because what we do is we think, if I was in that situation, I would hate it and I would want someone to come and rescue me.
Yeah.
But everyone in that situation prefers that situation. They're not there by force. Your parents aren't forced to take care of them. Your sisters aren't forced to be there, right? Everybody is where there's a funny meme on Instagram, which is a guy, he's a small guy. He's got this absolute giant Amazon of a girlfriend, and she kind of pins him up against the wall and kisses him hard. And the comments are all like, hey, he's not a victim. Bro is right where he wants to be. Don't change a thing. He's happy where he is, that kind of thing, right? And it's kind of a joke, right? But it's kind of real in a way that if you put yourself in your sister's life, you'd be like, oh my God, what a nightmare. I couldn't live like that. But, or if you were to picture being in your parents' life, you're like, oh my God, I wouldn't let these two people sit on the couch week after week, year after year. It would drive me crazy. But it doesn't drive them crazy. They're fine with it. I mean, maybe it bothers your dad to some degree, but not enough to change it. It's kind of like people who are, like they don't exercise at all, right? I find that incomprehensible. I would go nuts. Like I would go nuts not being able to exercise. And yet they're happy with it. So I sit there and say, my God, if I was them, it would go crazy. Not being able to move and feel strong and all that kind of stuff. Like I could not go through life with this pencil neck and noodle arms. Like I couldn't do it. And it's actually kind of important for me to be at least somewhat physically strong because I'm controversial and all that, right? So I need to have that aura energy when I move through the world. But even before I became notorious, I couldn't stand the idea of not exercising. And I couldn't stand the idea of working for the government, but 40% of people love working for the government, right? And so there are people out there who are just fundamentally different from you. And recognizing that they are happier not listening to you. Now you could say, yes, but in the long run, this, that, and the other. Yeah, well, who cares? I mean, if they don't care about the long run, why should you? It's really the toughest thing with family, and it's true in life as a whole. I have a really foundational principle. I will not care about people more than they care about themselves. I won't do it. So if somebody's overweight that I care about, I'll say, you really should lose some weight. You really should exercise. You should quit smoking. You shouldn't drink so much, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give them that. And if they listen, great, fantastic. If they don't listen, then I will not care about them. I will not care about people more than they care about themselves. Because that's just a hole with no bottom, and you end up being just manipulated and pushed around. So I know it's going to, like nails on a chalkboard. You're going to go over there tomorrow and you'll be like, oh my God, if I was in that life, I'd want to throw myself off a bridge or something silly, right? But they're fine with it. Your parents are fine with it. Your sisters are fine with it. Oh, but they're wasting their lives. It's like, yeah, but most people do. Most people do waste their lives. Most people achieve nothing of any particular importance. They don't think any original thoughts. They don't build any businesses. They don't build happy families. They're not great parents. Like, most people do waste their lives. They doom scroll. They play way too many video games. They just endlessly consume media. They're just passive meat bags waiting to dissolve. So most people do waste their lives. I hope that in this audience, and I certainly aim for that for myself, to try and do something original and important with the short time that I have on this amazing planet. Most people waste their lives. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. I don't understand it. You have this incredible gift. Everyone has this incredible gift. You should really try and do something with it. It's like somebody who constantly complains about being poor, and then they inherit $10 million and they just leave it sitting. Like, I had someone I knew when I was younger, broke, and a relative died, and they got a chunk of money, a lot of money, and they lived exactly the same. It's like, but you got some money, go travel, do something. Like, why are you still getting up and going to the same job you hate? And why don't you? Anyway, I won't. But hey, man, I mean, if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. I mean, you can make your case. Hey, sis, I think you should, maybe get some therapy and just make sure that none of this is in your head, and right. And you say, younger sister, like, you're probably going to not end up very happy if you don't have any kids and don't live your own life and go out there in the world and try and stake your claim. And then you've said your piece. Like, you say enough that your conscience is content. Like I said, like, it's like if you have some friend, I don't know, some woman, right? And she's dating a guy, he's bad news. Now, he's tall, he's good looking, whatever, tall, dark, and hat, but he's bad news. And he's bad news. So what you have to do, you have to go and say, he's bad news, and here's why. I don't think you should date him. Will she listen to you? Probably not. But at least you said it. And so your conscience is okay. Because then when things go to hell in a handbasket with this lunatic and she comes crying to you, you'll be like, hey, sorry, I that's why I told you not to date him. And you don't have to give a whole lot of sympathy, because I don't give sympathy to people who don't listen to good advice. So if you want to make your case, but you don't have to change anything, because you can't. It's not your household. It's not your money. You have no legal rights. You have no authority. You're not giving them anything, so you can't hold anything back. You can't withhold anything. You can say, I don't think it's the best way to live. I would make a different choice myself. I think it's going to be tough for you in the long run, and so on. And don't you, you can say to your elder sister, don't you want to be a bit more of an inspiring role model for your kid, so that they don't think that this is all there is to life, which is, not a huge amount. And you can say to your younger sister whatever you say, and then that's it. That's it. If they want to call you up, they can call you up and say, hey, what did you mean by that? Or tell me, that really, I was really thinking about that. Or that really kind of bothered me. Like, and whatever it is. So they'll call you up. But if they're just like, yeah, my brother, he says his piece, he just flaps his gums, and we just go back to the way things were. And it's like, okay, well, learning how to not be bothered by people who make bad choices is one of the most foundational pillars of human happiness. Most of the world is making really bad choices. And sailing through life with some level of comfort, despite the fact that people you care about make terrible choices. Let them make their choices. You can say your piece. Your conscience is clear. Don't get overinvested, because then they drag you down. They don't end up any happier. You just end up more unhappy. And that's a terrible trade-off for the overall happiness of the world. All right. End of speech. Go ahead.
Yeah. I actually did advise her to not speak to both the men she ended up marrying, but she didn't listen to me. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I don't know why. I guess it bothers me so much. It's like I have to. I don't know. It almost feels like I have to be the adult, because my dad just can't come down on them, and my mom can almost not speak anymore. So it's just like,
it's not your problem to solve. Hang on, bro. It's not. You're in your late 30s or whatever you are. It's not your problem to solve. They're not your family. They're your parents. children, not yours. Do you have kids of your own?
I do.
Okay. So focus your energy on your children and your family. That's where you have some authority. That's where you have some control. That's where you have influence. But chasing a dysfunctional family of origin off a cliff harms your family and doesn't help their family. As you know, probably better than I do, you probably have more kids than I do. So as you know, and this is just a tiny reminder, the number one principle you guide your life by is what's best for your children. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Is it best for your children that you start wrangling with this viper's nest of dysfunction and try and fix it? Is it best for your children?
I would say no.
Well, there you go. I mean, being a parent is dead simple in terms of priorities, right? It's dead simple. And it is this best for my children? And trying to fix your family of origin with your over generous father and your Alzheimer's mother and your half a medical textbook older sister and middle sister, and then, the shy butterfly artistic impulse shadow cast of your youngest sister, you can't fix that. But all it will do is take resources away from your own happiness and your own family, and all it will do is interfere with your happiness with your children. It will interfere with your ability to play with your children, to laugh with them, to have joy, because you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is such a mess. I've got to fix it. I've got to fix it. And you will not add one atom of benefit to your family of origin. All you will do is subtract tsunamis of happiness from your current family. What's best for your kids? Really all you have to focus on.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. This is when you put it that way, because it like torments me, I guess.
Mhm.
And
It does. And I think that's lovely. Lovely. You're from the army. It's manly. It's good. Terry chested. It's optimal OPSEC. I don't know, whatever, right? But I mean, listen, it's a beautiful thing that you care. And caring for your family where you have some authority, traction, and control is where you should put your caring. Letting people make bad decisions, say your piece. Letting people make bad decisions is foundational to your happiness. Look, I could wake up every morning, and I do think of this from time to time, like I could wake up every morning and I could say, oh, my mother's still alone. My mother's still kind of crazy. And it's really sad. And there's this other guy I know who, when I was younger and he was not going a good direction, and I checked on some other guy, he got a divorce. How are his kids doing? All the people who've made bad decisions over the course of my life, I could worry about them every day. I could worry about European borders. I could worry about the national debt. I could worry about whatever, right?
yeah. Mhm.
But what is best for my family? What is best for my daughter? What is best for my life? Now, what is best for my daughter is to some degree doing these kinds of shows and spreading reason and virtue and all that kind of good stuff. And so learning how to let people walk off a cliff is really tough in life, because you want to tackle them and you want to hold them back, right? Don't walk off a cliff. Don't walk off a cliff. Don't walk off a cliff. Because life is just
Right.
watching people walk off a cliff for the most part, because there's very few wise people and very few people who listen to reason. Most of life is just watching people march off a cliff like a bunch of lemmings. Off they go, off they go, off they go, off they go. Right? I mean, learning to turn away from that and not even playing that movie in your mind's eye is really important. It's a kind of self-discipline. Listen, you're a very disciplined guy. You were in the army, probably more so than me in many ways. But my particular focus on self-discipline is I got to turn away from the spectacle of watching half the fucking world walk off a cliff and the rest of it run off the cliff. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. But I can't stop them. I cannot stop them because it's free will. The only way I
I
could
just-
stop people walking off a cliff is to lock them in a cage, which would get me locked in a cage because it's illegal, right? So
Right.
people are going to walk off a cliff. I can say, hey, there's a cliff. You shouldn't walk off the cliff. It's really important not to walk off the cliff, blah, 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 right? And listen, I've walked off cliffs of my own in my day, and I'm probably still got a few more to go. And probably people will go nuts saying, we told you, you shouldn't have, blah, 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 right? It wasn't like my career's been soundly managed for maximum reach or exposure over the last 10 years. But that discipline, your sisters and your parents are colluding to waste their lives.
Yeah.
They are walking off a cliff and saying, you shouldn't walk off the cliff. And what do they do? What do they do? Well, your sister has said what she's going to do. She's just going to get up and walk out, right?
Right.
So if you tell me to walk off a cliff, you know what I'm going to do, bro? I'm going to run off that cliff. That's what I'm going to do. You tell me to walk, I'm going to run. Okay, so what can you do? All you can do is turn away and leave the cliff edge. Leave and people, I know, they're still flowing off. They're still flowing off the cliff edge. But you can't stop them. And all you can do is sit there in your mind in mute horror watching as everyone flows over that cliff. Crashes and bangs and bruises themselves, except it takes like 50 years for them to fall. That's the problem. If it was quick, it would be not so bad, but it takes them 50 years to fall. So, in my view, if I were in your shoes, I would go, say my piece, say, hey, I'm not going to make a big thing out of this. Just indulge me. Let me just say this once, get it off my chest. We can go back to whatever we were doing otherwise. And then if people were continuing to self-mangle themselves with terrible decisions, I personally would be out. I can turn away from people in my mind's eye walking or running off that cliff. What I can't do is have a courtside seat to it. That's what I can't do. I can't watch it in person. That's why I don't hang around self-destructive people. So I can turn away from it knowing it's happening. I can dim it from my mind's eye. I can take it out of my mind's eye. What I can't do is literally sit there at the cliff edge watching it happen, because then I can't forget about it and it's burning itself into my brain.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. It's like I even told my dad that I don't even want to be here when they're here, because it's just like, it's almost like they try to keep this happy kind of churchy family thingy, but really underneath it's like shallow. It's like really it's a thin veneer of contempt and resentment and all this other stuff underneath. And it's just it's like suffocating. I don't even like being there. And I would love to be there for my parents and help them. It's just like when they're there, when my sisters was there, and just like, hey, and what you're saying makes sense. Is I want to be there to help, but I don't know. I guess say my piece, and
You can't help people who don't think they have a problem. I mean, if your car is in perfect shape and some guy knocks on your door and he says, hey man, I can pull out those dents for you, what do you say?
Pull them out.
No, your car's in perfect shape. What do you say?
Oh, well, there's nothing wrong with my car.
Right. What are you offering to fix? It's not broken. You scam artist.
Yeah.
So that's how people are. They don't think they're broken. They think their car's in great shape and everything's great. And you're sitting there saying, hey man, I can buff out that problem for you and pull that out, fix that whole car up. And they're like, what are you talking about? I just got it off the dealer's lot. It's perfectly pristine. I've driven it like 8 miles. And people, you cannot fix what people will not admit is broken. And it's tough. That's the kind of discipline you need, though, I think.
Would there be a way to, I don't know, hold the mirror up to him and maybe some sort of breakthrough where they're like, oh man, I've been miserable shits to my parents all these years. I mean,
You're asking, can people grow a conscience? Okay. I mean, we don't need to guess about this. Psychology is pretty clear. People do not grow a conscience later in life. It's like asking someone to grow an arm back. Like, oh, I lost my arm when I was a kid. I got bitten off by a gator or a shark or something. And it's like, I'm just waiting, man. He's going to grow that arm back anytime. No, a conscience does not regrow later on in life. Nobody knows how to create I mean, if we knew how to create a conscience, we wouldn't need prisons.
Right.
We don't know how to create a conscience for people who don't have a conscience. We don't know how to do it. Nobody knows how to do it. And I've never heard of it being done. And psychologists, again, to my knowledge, right? Look it up, right? But
yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like I've done so much work on myself to be better and more empathetic and really see things from other people's view about everything. And I just like, I don't know. I was hoping maybe I could coach my sisters through that. Or
you want to see people from people's point of view, and that includes seeing people from the point of view of being a narcissist. Not that you're a narcissist, but let's just say there's a guy named Bob who's a narcissist, and you say, well, I want to see things from Bob's point of view. It's like, okay, then Bob only sees himself. He doesn't care about other people. He doesn't really notice other people. They're just like flesh robots that are there to serve his needs. And your sisters, for whatever reason, have decided to hang out at home and hide away from life, and it's easier. And by now, like, okay, when was the last time your 35-year-old sister had a full-time job?
Never, I think.
Right. So how many people are going to want to hire people who've never had a full-time job who are in their mid-30s?
I would assume it'd be pretty difficult.
It's not going to happen.
No.
So that's what she's chosen. Maybe you could have said something when you were younger. Doesn't really matter. Water under the bridge. But yeah, that's learning to accept that people are just going to stroll off that cliff and there's nothing you can do. And sometimes, I mean, the whole Western world is strolling off that cliff.
Yeah.
And I've been screaming at the top of my lungs for 45 years. And I can't ruin my life and my health by staring at that conveyor belt of people walking off a cliff. You know, women are like, oh, we've got to be empathetic to everyone in the world. And it's like, a lot of those people don't have a lot of empathy themselves, right?
Oh, yes. That's, I see the same thing. It's very,
so,
very
honestly, all I can do is say, I'm not going to watch it directly, and I'm going to turn it off in my mind's eye as best I can. And it's tough. I mean, I won't get into my own family members, but yeah, people make terrible mistakes. They don't listen to reason, and you have to harden your heart to the consequences of that. If you say to someone, man, you got to quit smoking, and they keep smoking, then they get sick. It's like, I got to harden my heart. I'm not going through the pain of giving people good advice and being rejected, and then also go through the pain of comforting them for not listening to me. I'm not doing both. You get one or the other from me. If I don't give you good advice and a bad thing happens to you, you get my sympathy. If I give you good advice and you reject me, you don't get my sympathy. I have to be really strict about that.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I never really thought of it like that. So if I say my piece and whatever tomorrow, would you, I guess, suggest just not even interacting at all until they move out? because like I said, I don't
Well,
want to.
that's a whole other question. Let's just do one at a time, because you asked me about tomorrow, like the long-term possible consequences of what happens tomorrow. Let's just see what happens tomorrow. freedomain.com/call. If you want to book a call-in show, you can be public or private. I'm not trying to make money off you here, but if you want it private, that's fine too. But I don't know what you should do in the long run with your family. That's a whole other question or conversation. But with regards to tomorrow, if I were in your shoes again, I would say my piece and then shut up. And if they don't listen or they get hostile, the great thing is I can unplug my compassion for them, and I'm free from obligation. Give people good advice. If they don't listen, that's one thing. If they attack you, you're free of obligation, and then they can go pound sand and fill their boots as far as I'm concerned. All right. Well, I'll stop here, and I do thank everyone for a lovely evening's conversation. I really do appreciate you guys are, I know everyone's going to say this who runs the show, you're the best audience in the world, and I really thank you. I'm sorry we didn't get to the last 2 callers, but I'm doing a show, and we'll do an open show Sunday at 10 a.m. freedomain.com/donate. It's a light month for donations. Listen, I know gas is expensive, things are tough, and I obviously don't spend anything you can't afford, but if you could help out, freedomain.com/donate, I really would appreciate it. I've got a show with Sam Hyde coming out soon that was in studio. That was really quite interesting, and I hope you will check that out. I don't know when it's going to be out, but hopefully soon. And shop.freedomain.com for your merch, and peacefulparenting.com. If you can share that book, that would be excellent. freedomain.com/call to book your call-in shows. Lots of love, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.